You don't often hear people talking about poverty in America. It's seen as a nation that takes care of its people. And in fact, we have, as a nation, 1 in 5 children live in poverty. I grew up in the deepest poverty in America, which is generational poverty. And what that term really means is that most of my family members can't read and write. And right now, about 44 million Americans cannot read and write. And that number doubles if you look at functional literacy, which is people who can read a little bit, but they couldn't read a newspaper or a textbook. And that was kind of where I came from. I mean, I grew up watching people work hard my whole life, really hard physical labor, yet we were still evicted. There are 2 variables that increase earnings in American labor market. Get a skill, get educated. Mm-hmm. And the statistics are so clear. Even 1 year of college increases earning potential. The United States of America is number 1 in the world for putting human beings in cages. And 80% of them can't read at 8th grade level. And if you go and you listen to their stories, you hear poverty, 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 poverty. It's such a huge issue. You can look at it from a money side. It's $176,000 per year to cage 1 juvenile. 1 kid. $176,000. That's the national average. Think about how much money you're spending, taxpayer dollars. How much money are you spending to put 1 kid in a cage? What if we did preventative? That child would be a taxpayer. Your taxes would be less.
We're the only country in the world that kind of blames poverty on the people who are poor.
Yeah, we are. We are the only country in the world that teaches people they're the cause of poverty. Well, there's a lot of assumptions about what resources children have outside of the school. Perfect example, I was mentoring an 8th grade girl, and I was talking to her math teacher, and I said, help me understand why she's failing. She's really bright. And he said, she will not do her homework. And I said, let me help you understand who that homework's going home to. Alicia lives in a 1-bedroom apartment with 22 people. One of her walls isn't a wall. It's tarps made out of garbage bags. Not one of those folks can do 8th grade math and give her any supports possible. So when you get blamed and you get those messages that something's wrong with you, why don't you just? Why don't you just show up? Why don't you just go here? Why don't you just do that? And you don't have any capacity. And you've already internalized. By the time, if a child makes it to high school and they're in poverty, by the time they get there, they've internalized deeply that they are the cause, that they're deficient. Something's wrong with me. I need to be ashamed of my family. I need to be ashamed of everything. And so that shame paralyzes you. If I'm deficient, if something's wrong with me, why try to get a GED? It's just one more time I'm going to be a failure. How many times have you heard that statement, it takes a village? I mean, we know that, yet for people in the war zone of poverty, we say you got to do it yourself. They can't. They need the community. They need the community to rally around. So all of my work is about let's bring communities together. Let's engage citizens who have never been involved in fighting that evil villain poverty. Let's fight the poverty, not the people. Let's separate the people from the poverty.
So have any of your siblings gotten out of poverty, got an education?
You know, I can't tell you how profound the impact you have when you touch the life of someone in poverty, on that family, on that community that they live in, the neighborhood. I have 2 brothers now who have college degrees, including my brother Wayne, who spent most of his time in a cage. And I have multiple cousins who grew up with parents who can't read and write, living in cars, following the fruit, entering grad school. I have nieces and nephews who talk about college like it's normal. We want to talk about interrupting the cycle of poverty. We got to start with community and building capacity and person to person saying, this is a human. What's in my hands? What can I do? And if I can't, then who might be able to? But it really does take the community. And the interesting thing about pilot programs is when we do pilot programs, we tend to do it right. We get all the stakeholders to the table so that we're providing a comprehensive approach.
correct that you did a survey of your neighborhood before you moved forward with your...
No, I hand-delivered letters to all of our abutting neighbors saying that we're going to be doing this.
Oh, so it's sort of a tell thing. We are going to be doing this.
Yes. Yeah, really didn't desire a lot of feedback.
So please don't burn our porta potty.
Yes, and the only feedback I got was positive. 2 people called and said they're really glad we're doing it. Southeast Eugene is, of course, the progressive hub of things, but not always really thrilled about things like homeless shelters. But it's fabulous, and you haven't had a single word of anything but positive about having it there. There's some structural things we need to change, like building codes, and that's the beginning. So how do we, because right now, because of the bungalows and because of the huts, the work that we did, those can be in any municipality in the state.
We need to have innovative ideas, and we need to have out-of-the-box thinking. But we also need power and something to motivate that. And that's why I was asking earlier about, is there a way for the houses of faith to be part of the effort to make that happen? Because I have a feeling the city council would get behind it, but I'm not so sure they're going to be in front of it. I think that's exactly what happened at Opportunity Village. As soon as they saw it was a good idea, they saw the benefits, they trusted you, and they got behind it.
Yep.
But they didn't do it.
Right, and the huts, those got pushed because churches started getting them in their parking lots.
Right.
And the bungalows, the first bungalow that went up. So the huts and that whole movement, that was led from the front by the folks at CSS and with some help from the churches. And OVE behind that. OVE, as it was starting, sort of converged with that.
What fuels your activism, and what optimism do you hold? I mean, it keeps pulling you forward.
Yeah. Not a particularly optimistic, but I have a scatological hope that in the end, the God's will be done. That the way it's supposed to be will happen. That might be when the glaciers come back and just wipe it all away. I don't know, but I think in Kairos, in God's time, all will be made well. And really, the kingdom of God is at hand. And the way that we realize that is by acting like it is. It's the priest runs to the Pope and says, "Holy Father, I think I've lost my faith. What do I do? Fake it. Fake it. And if we act as if it is, it will become that. And that's the incredibly simple lesson that Jesus Christ teaches, is that if you just behave like it's the kingdom of God, oh wow, there's the kingdom of God, it's right here. And by doing those little baby steps to the kingdom, little tiny bits, building relationships with people that you wouldn't rather otherwise, or you don't have the opportunity otherwise, that is Jesus Christ manifest in our midst. And those little tiny bits, there's nothing else we can do. And that, experiencing that and seeing that and seeing the deep suffering that's there and those little glimpses of holiness that arise in places that, I see folks and what they go through, and I can't imagine what that must be like. We're all just 5 missed meals from the Stone Age. And that is absolutely true. And we are no better, different, other than anyone else. And when we really realize that, and we really can then begin to see the face of Christ looking back at us in the most unpleasant people, the most violent, abusive, horrible chimos, that's Jesus Christ looking back at us. How do we begin to actually internalize that? That's the work of the church. We need to make our lives harder because it's really, really hard for a lot of people involuntarily. And we can do an amazing, the vast majority of problems in the world are because people like us in North America and in Northern Europe, our lives aren't hard enough. It's way too easy. And then we consume the majority of the world's resources having easy lives. And that just won't do. That is not what that doesn't make baby Jesus smile. But I could be wrong.
I might